In academic writings, as we said, we summarize our informations using an abstract. So the structure and styles on how an abstract is properly written to portray most of the characteristics and elements that an abstract should contain is the point of our today's discussion. We are going to discuss entirely what is an abstract, the types of an abstract, forms of an abstract, and mainly on the components and elements that are within an abstract. And we will end up giving some hypothetical examples to display the component that an abstract has and in which formalities or structure or style they are involved. Alexander Pope, once a time, he was quoted publicly trying to tell the public that easy in writings comes from an art. It's not just by chance. Rather, those who have been involved in writing, they have read a lot about it, and they are now dancing in a proper tune. So, involving in writings, it will help us to know a proper writing style, because when you are writing an abstract, you need to have some practices and you have to know what are the important elements that one should take into considerations before doing into another way out. So consider these two hotels. This is hotel number 1. This is hotel number 2. These are the buildings of two different hotels. Assume now you are intending to book these hotels online for your traveling. And when you open to this hotel, you find this is hotel number 1, this is hotel number 2. Phenotypically, by physical appearance, when you observe this hotel number 1, it seems to be bad and not attractive, showing that as if it's going to fall apart, it's not well structured. But when you observe the hotel number 2, you will find the hotel is with very good buildings, physically indicating that everything is okay. But sometimes this does not mean that is the reality, because you may find this hotel is phenotypically bad, it's not attractive, but what is inside means bedding, services, and the customers' care is properly well to these buildings as you compare the building. This hotel might have good lookings, but customer care services inside the room is not good as compared to this one. But because we are looking on the physical appearance, most of people may opt for the hotel number 2 for their bookings for a particular travels. Now, physical or the external appearances of a particular issues may attract people's for it. Similarly, in writing of an abstract, people usually do not read the whole articles. They do so only if they have a certain interest on it. But what they do is simply they read an abstract. Reading of this an abstract, then they will decide to go in or what. Therefore, an abstract acts as a seducing mechanism for readers. So it should be accurate and precise, and it should be written in such a way that it should convey the most interesting and most important parts of your work. Therefore, if the abstract is well structured from the beginning, even if the readers was not interested to go deep into that particular paper, because abstract would act as an attractive. The reader can also get attracted and book for the particular paper. So we should be in the position of phrasing and writing on our abstract such that it makes some seducements for the reader. So how do we write a good and proper and abstract? What are the elements of this abstract is what are we going to discuss today. Go into those detailed informations about an abstract. Let us highlight some important points of which is relevant for us. First point, we should understand that while writing this an abstract for a paper, publication, or for international conference, proceedings, and other related, we should consider that a concept of flexibility, because there are different formats or guidelines from a particular journal or a particular institutions on how the abstract should be structured. But regardless of different structuring styles and whatever, but the components are almost the same. And what am I going to teach you today is the component of this abstract. Also, we should adhere to the word limits, because most of the abstract you may find they are limited to 100 words to 200.5 words, sometimes 300 words, and in most rare cases you may find 500 words, of which these categories of abstract they are grouped under the so-called extended kind of abstracts. We will have a different topic to discuss why do we call it extended abstracts. For days, we just name it as it is. So while writing an abstract, we are to avoid some citations on that particular abstract unless there is some unique demanding aspect of which you should use a citation. But at normal situation, abstract, it should not have citations. Avoid the use of abbreviations except for some international recognized abbreviations of which they are acceptable and known to everyone. Another thing is abstract under normal situation is a single paragraph. All the information should be phrased in a single paragraph, except when there are some other more guideline or formality that are directed by a particular journals. And while writing the abstract, we should avoid storytelling. Rather, we should go directly to a point of interest. Story writing is not advised. And one should understand that abstracts should be different from a conclusion. That abstract is not equal to conclusion. The way we write conclusion has its specific criteria, ways, principle behind, which are totally different from what an abstract is. Similarly, an abstract is not equal to what we call the exactive summary. Exactive summary has its principle, ways, and modalities on how to write it, of which they are not equal to what an abstract is. An abstract. This abstract can be categorized generally into two main groups. We have what we call the descriptive abstracts and what we call the informative abstracts. So the descriptive type of abstract, this can simply call it just a summary of the information, and this is more common to a proposal stages of a research. Under this particular area, a researcher has simply tried to write out about the proposal pertaining to his study, and then after writing your proposal, you will be required to present your proposal so that people will accept that you are now matured to carry out your data collections and other furthermore parties of your study. Under these particular proposal stages of your research, then you will be required to submit a document describing your proposal, especially indicating your objectives, the chapter 1, all issues under chapter 1, the methodology, the research literature reviews, and we end up with the methodology. So the proposal will have only 3 sections or chapters ending with the methodological section. Then, under the document of the proposal, also you need to write up the summaries, the abstractive styles of which will contain these 3 important chapters, and then issues related to results and the conclusion will not be observed under this kind of an abstract. So such kind of an abstract which simply describes a summary pertaining to a proposal is what we call a descriptive types of an abstract. But when we come to this informative abstract, this is the one which now we are going to discuss. This is an abstract which explains the general activities or the informations pertaining to your study. It is an abstract which is now showing the summary of your research as from the introduction section of your research to the conclusion. Now, it is an abstract which we write after we are done with all the process of research that you have gone for data collection, you have analyzed your data, and you have everything in the hands. You want now to communicate the findings to the information, to the public, whether by publishing a paper or making a conference, a seminar, or whatever technical report to the mass. So such kind of abstract, which is detailing the entire activities, what we call now the informative abstract. Then today we are going to discuss this informative kind of abstract because it's the one that I will tell you all the elements that one should take into consideration while writing for an abstract. This informative abstract can be divided into these 2 forms. We have the structured abstract, and the unstructured abstracts. So we have these 2, the structured and the unstructured abstracts. What is a structured abstract and what is an unstructured abstract? To understand this properly, I should take you first to the component of abstracts. But while writing an abstract, which is a single paragraph, these are the main components of which one should take into consideration. That there is an introduction section, there is a section of methods, there is a result section, and there is conclusion as well as its implications. What is your findings? What's your general conclusions regarding your study, and what does it imply to the reality in a particular real life situation? So I have condensed these components or elements of an abstract, this informative abstract, into 4 categories. They might be into 5 or 6 depending on the interest of a particular institution or journals, because some journal may separate the purpose, objective, and whatever they might separate it into other subsections. So you find the sections including, but to me, I've taken them this as under introduction, then we will have a researcher is then going to give the summaries pertaining to the purpose of the study. What was the purpose of your study? What was the objectives? What was the motive behind it? Why did you learn about that particular study? What were the problems that motivated you, necessitated you to get that particular study in that particular study sites? So all those informations will be summarized under the introduction section. And only 3 to 4 sentences will be enough to give the overall introductory section of your abstracts. And then will be followed by the methods. Under this particular section, a researcher will explain the design setups. What was the research design? What was the sample size? What were the methods that were used to collect data? What was the sampling design? What were the approach that were used while collecting the data? And what were the analytical tools, both software and instruments that were used for data analysis? And what were the experimental that were undertaken while making data manipulation and data analysis, computation, and all other related data manipulation aspects should be explained under a methodological part of your abstract. Then after the methods, you go for the result section. On the result section here, you're going to make a descriptive. You give out your results in form of either a descriptive values, whether percentage, frequency, mean, standard error, I don't know, coefficient of variation, or in terms of statistical probability values. Sometimes it might be in terms of narrative statements. This is common to these social-related studies in which they might be giving their findings in terms of statements without the use of numerical values and etc. And then you will end up with conclusions and its implications pertaining to your study. These are some of the most important elements that within an abstract one should take into consideration. So failure to indicate these issues, you are providing an abstract which is incomplete, and therefore academically we call it an academic negligence, which is not good. So based on these particular elements, then we can now explain properly what is a structured abstract and unstructured abstract. When we speak of the structured abstract, this is the type of abstract, informative abstract, on which there is headings. These headings are observed. The heading first, then followed by some description, then you go method followed by description, result followed by description, conclusion followed by description. So there must be some headings first and then followed by the description about it. But under unstructured abstract, the headings are not observed. Only some descriptions, narrations about that particular information are there without headings and subheadings of that particular area. So I'm going to give you some typical examples so that you will be in the position to differentiate what is an abstract, structured abstract, and what is the unstructured abstracts. Keywords, this is another topic that we will discuss on another section. Today we are going to discuss only the abstract and its sections, structures, and styles on how we can write it. This is a sample of an abstract. A single paragraph. This is a single paragraph. And it has introduction, method section, results, and the conclusion. And these are here indicated. This is what now we call the structured one, that there must be headings of each of the section within your abstract. So under introduction, as I said, this is the section that will give the information as to why you carried that particular study, what was the reason behind, what was the ideas, what was the motive, what was the objectives. All those information should appear under this introduction. And then after, you go for the methods. Under these particular sections, as you find, it will explain all the methods that were taken during data collection and data analysis. And then you go for the result. What were the findings of that particular study? You give just a main simple summaries. You take the main findings of your study. You summarize them under this result section. And then you go for the conclusion and its implications. Let us see a little bit what is on introduction, taking to this an example. Here is he was doing this, the author on this particular study, a study was conducted to assess fodder productivity and the nutritive potential within this traditional fodder banks in central Tanzania, tradition known as Ingitili. This is in Africa. So what were the methods? So this was the overall idea of the study. Why he conducted this study? Because forage from grazing lands comprises of conventional feed resources for ruminants in the tropical region. So he decided to carry out a study to make investigations, estimations of this fodder productivity and the nutritive value for among these fodder banks of central Tanzania. So the methods, a study adopted a complementary randomized design, and data were collected by point sampling techniques using 0.5 meter quadrats, followed by laboratory experimentation for phytochemical analysis. These were the method that were used and the analytical styles. What were the results? The grazing land were dominated by low quality increases grass species. We tried to mention most of the dominant plant species that were observed in that particular area. And the basal cover was significant, varied from this particular percentage to this one. Biomass productivity was also varied from 0.76 to 3.69 tons per hectare of dry matter content. Forage productivity in terms of proteins, nitrogen, fiber content, and all those things were also varied accordingly to what the study recorded. You can pause the video and read one try to another. Then you will find how the sequence of the result were presented in a summary form. And then the conclusion. The conclusion, he came up with a conclusion realizing what was the productivity of those things and why this productivity, he said, were good or bad based on what particular scenario, and what was the implication of the finding from this particular area. So you find this is a single paragraph summarized in such a way that a person reading this one can understand the entire information pertaining to that particular paper. Also, another style that you may find in some journal, that every section should have to form an independent paragraphs. This is an introduction, with its paragraph, the method with its paragraphs, the results with its paragraph, then the conclusion and the implication with its paragraphs. So there is different structuring, different style, but whatever kind of style, kind of structure, kind of ways, but the main content should be reflected in all of this. Here there is also an introduction. If you read it, typically that there showing that development and anthropogenic activities are observed to be the main cause of forest degradation and loss of biological diversity, and they lead to a high concentration of carbon dioxide to atmosphere. Therefore, because of this, there is a need of finding a proper mechanisms on how to mitigate and to solve this particular problem. That was the idea behind this study. So these are some of the methods that were used to study this particular area. And these are the results. If you see these results are in a form of narrative, there is no numerical values over here. Instead, there are some explanation kind of result telling that the result showed positive correlation between tree species, diameter at breast height, and biomass carbon stocking to that particular area. So this kind of result giving is in a narrative style, and then he come up with the conclusion. So this is another style on how one can write an abstract, but this element of abstract should be reflected. What about the unstructured types? This is what we call the unstructured. You find this is a single paragraph. There is no heading. There is no heading. I don't know, introduction, methods, results, and conclusion is not here indicated. But when you read this information, you will be getting that from here going to this particular point, it will indicate you the introduction sections. And from these points to here, this indicates the method that were used in the study. And from these points to here, this also will be indicating the results. And then from here to this particular point will show the conclusion and the implication. So this is the unstructured abstract. Let's look what the study was carried in the community forest conserved under indigenous knowledge known as Gitili and Kishap districts. The aim of the study was to assess the current status, determine species diversity, and the quantifications of both herbaceous and biomass productivity carbon stocks. See, that was an introduction. Why was the study? What was the reason behind? So a field study, then this is the method. The field survey was conducted for recording the current status, while phytochemical study was carried to record vegetation composition and diversity using point sampling. Regeneration potential was determined based on population size. Disturbance index was used to calculate the level of disturbance. Herbaceous and the tree stocking were estimated based on aerometric models. Descriptive statistics for quantitative data were analyzed using the general linear model of the SAS version, this one. You see, that's indicating the methods. The study recorded a total of this one. Now this is the results. Explaining the result and goes to the main point, and then this is signified that this indicating the conclusion and its implications for the ideas.